Speed, pace, momentum, velocity. Our world is increasingly fast and our culture is immediate. Everything moves quickly. Moving your money shouldn't be any different. With Gravity, you can buy and sell Bitcoin instantly. We're building the Bitcoin bank of the future today.
All right, so welcome for another episode of the Bitstocks podcast. And we have here none other than the CEO of Centbee, Lorien Gamaroff. Lorien, how are you, my friend? How you been?
I'm great. I'm amazing. I've been doing well. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. So in London for how long now?
For 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And you just arrived?
Yesterday.
And
I'll be here for the conference and then the CoinGeek conference. And then after that, the Bitcoin Association are having some Bitcoin training sessions and I'll be attending that as well.
Oh, nice one. So something that you may not be aware of is first time I saw you speak was at CoinGeek, right? It was CoinGeek. In fact, was that even a CoinGeek event or was it just before CoinGeek became CoinGeek? It was Asia. Hong Kong, I think it was.
In Hong Kong, that was the I think it was the first CoinGeek.
It was the first one, wasn't it? Yeah. And of the speakers there, you're definitely one individual that stood out to me, right? One is Africa, which as this conversation flows, you'll realize just why that resonates with me if we get into that. But you had a very clear, direct vision as to what you want your company to be and the role that you wish your company to play. And naturally, seeing how passionate you are when you speak on the subject of Africa and why it is that you're doing what it is you're doing with at a time it was Bitcoin Cash, right? And now I've naturally transitioned into Bitcoin SV. But the employee number one at Bitstocks was originally from South Africa. In fact, she was working in South Africa as a consultant for us on our marketing efforts. This is pretty much when I was running as a one-man band. And one of the things that I remember speaking to her about, one of the things that she was very excited about was I think it's the energy meters.
Right.
In a school, which then later on I realized that you were some way involved in that.
Yes, that was my project.
Right. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and why Bitcoin and how this all really marries together, because you've been blipping and coming up in our story over the years. So I know you've definitely been around for a while. So please, by all means, Lorien, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I guess I'll just start basically from the beginning. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. And I remember when the 2008 financial crisis happened in Zimbabwe, before it was a global financial crisis and the dollar collapsed. That was very interesting and strange to me. This idea that money can suddenly just die. I had family members who were impacted, and it was quite a strange issue. And then when Bitcoin came along, I heard about it in late 2010, and then in early 2011, really started thinking seriously about it as a payment system for the work that I was doing in the energy industry. Because in Africa, it's quite difficult, digital payment methods, especially at that time, weren't really available. And Bitcoin as this digital payment method that could be used by anybody without a bank account, but also had this new concept to me, which was this sound money principle. I think that all really resonated with me. Seeing how money could actually be destroyed by a central bank through hyperinflation. That was the first time I encountered this idea of money and fiat currency, and then thereafter this idea of Austrian economics and sound money. So I think and also as a technologist, a software engineer, I was building payment systems and vending systems in the energy industry, and thought, well, Bitcoin could be a really interesting new way that people could make payments, especially after the Silk Road website became, everybody started hearing about it and people were actually using Bitcoin as a payment method. It wasn't just this geeky project anymore. So it really, I think it dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's for me in terms of a payment system that was readily available for people who didn't have access to the traditional financial system, but then also had the sound money principle attached to it. I think that all those things just really came together together for me. And I thought, well, this is now something that I think will definitely change the world. And being a software engineer, it was easy for me to then look at the technology and start integrating it into the systems that we had then. But of course, in those days, it was tainted with this idea that it was a dark market currency and anonymous and, all the things that are not true about Bitcoin, but have become true about many other cryptocurrencies. And so the company, as I was involved with, they weren't really interested in pursuing that. And so then I decided to embark on my own venture, trying to bring Bitcoin to the masses. And, my vision, which hasn't changed, is to bring Bitcoin to Africa. And one of the things I kept on talking about, because at that stage I had I founded a company called Ban Ki-moon, which was this sort of a Bitcoin advisory consulting company. I did a bit of building a bit of proofs of concept on Bitcoin and blockchain. But most of the work I was doing at Ban Ki-moon was advising and training government and big corporate executives who are now hearing this buzzword, and ended up, doing a lot of good work for organizations all around the world. I became the kind of Bitcoin or blockchain rather African guy, and spent a lot of time with central banks and the United Nations and the IMF.
So when was this time frame wise?
This was around 2015.
And what was that like? What was the initial impression? Because 2015 is when we really started as a company to step into our own. We incorporated in 2014, but we started functioning, say in 2015. And I remember what that landscape was like. Like it was very, very basic, very, very basic. It was convincing people that this was not, as you said earlier, a nefarious tool for people to pull together online, that it had great promise, but the jargon and also the way that we was articulating ourselves as a space was very dense. It was really super, it's still really nerdy now, but I'll say back then it was pretty dense. So to then simplify the space and try and bring it to a new audience, I remember just how difficult it was back then because there weren't that many great reference points to look towards. So what were those initial conversations like? How were you greeted? What were the initial pushbacks like?
Well, the first thing you had to get over was this idea that it was anonymous and this dark market currency. I was trying to push this idea that it was a distributed ledger that you could, have other kinds of information on, but also it was a form of money that could be regulated. I think that a lot of companies and government officials, the Reserve Bank that I have still today work with in South Africa, and then also the tax authorities, they thought it was just this currency that they'll never be able to have oversight over. So that was the biggest thing that I had to try and teach them about, that this was something that was a transparent ledger. That was the whole idea. There was traceability. And that's what I spent a lot of time doing. But obviously, in those days, I was a lot more motivated by the sound money aspect. I think everybody who gets into Bitcoin suddenly learns about Austrian economics and gold and why it's so important. And we look at the state of the world today with fiat currencies all seeming on the verge of collapsing. So I spent a lot of time, although, in retrospect, I shouldn't have, but a lot about the money aspect. And I was talking to central bankers, telling them about fiat currency and how, it was flawed. And I wish I had spent more time telling them about how it was regulated. It could be regulated. There could be tracing. Yeah. So nowadays, I'm beyond that. The fiat currency is a problem issue, and now more focused on saying, look, this is a tool that regulators will enjoy. The tax authorities should embrace such a technology because now it's going to be so easy to recover taxes.
And I think that's such an important and necessary and not that popular evolution of understanding when it comes to the subject matter of Bitcoin, because we could all understand and to a certain degree resonate where all the crazy anarchistic ideological views come from, just due to the fact that this community clearly feel very scarred by how the world has been run up until this point. And can we judge them for the scars? I don't think we can really judge them for the scarring. What they're going to do about the scarring, how they wish to proceed, that's where there's a challenge and there's a concern there. But I think it's really easy that if you speak on the subject of, say, just sound money and Bitcoin's great economics and therefore the pre-existing system must fall as a result just because we have sound money now, then that shows from our community at the time that we actually lack a lot of understanding about societal constructs, right? And to then the next stage is, all right, well, in 11 years, we definitely haven't got this whole sound money thing resolved. We haven't, right? We've cocked that up too, right? So it's a case of, all right, how do we take the best attributes of what this is in its present form? Eventually, I think it will get to the point where it's a global measurement of time, right? But it can serve and plug all of the holes in a pre-existing system if there's just some arches built between the two respective systems. And I think that should be a natural evolutionary process as to how people look at it, but clearly it hasn't done. We're very fortunate in this community that it has been our evolutionary process. But just to hear someone speak on that so openly and humbly, I think is worthwhile pulling up, because that really is the process that everyone is going to have to take. Whether we've taken it first or not is irrelevant. But I definitely think that we should highlight on that, because I can imagine there's going to be a lot more people taking that journey really, really soon. Sorry to cut you off. Please continue.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, it's always tempting to think that you can tear down the constructs in society that seem unfair or, when we look at central banking today, it seems like it's something that such a thing shouldn't exist. But also you have to be realistic and realize that unless you are a revolutionary and you're quite happy to go and try and bomb the Houses of Parliament, that you have to work with the system. And the way Bitcoin was designed was that it was something that could work with the system, and not only something that the owners of that system would tolerate, but something that the owners of that system would embrace. And that's why Bitcoin is so incredible, at least Satoshi's Bitcoin, because it's not something that the status quo have to tolerate. If they can see the benefits of such a thing, it is something that can eliminate fraud and corruption, and it is transparent. So that means they can have absolute oversight and better oversight than they do right now in terms of how money moves in an economy. I think that those are the sorts of things that will allow. F.A. Hayek said, we can't just overthrow the system. I forget the exact words, but we need to introduce a system that slowly but surely, sinks its roots in, and eventually the status quo can't do anything about it. But if you go in there, like the BTC communities and all these anonymous currency communities are going there. There's a conference right now in America, and it's the Bitcoin BTC conference, and it's called Unconfiscatable. And their whole message is that this is something governments can't do a thing about. They can't confiscate it. They can't censor my transactions. We're going to have this maximally distributed system or decentralized system that no matter how much the status quo wanted to shut it down, they can't. That kind of messaging is going to be precisely what gets them shut down. So the Bitcoin SV message, Satoshi Nakamoto's vision, is creating a system that complies and is something that can slowly make its way through the system as we know it, and get people into it, get regulators comfortable, and then hopefully becomes the system that is the dominant system, and then we don't have to have the kind of fiat system that we have today that seems so destructive.
Totally agree. And this is what I find interesting, because your position as a CEO of a Bitcoin company in Africa, the whole world has an opinion from the outside in on what life in Africa may be. For the most part, from what I've heard of these opinions, they tend to be inaccurate. Even my own, as an outsider, hasn't really properly explored Africa. I want to go there to see with my own eyes, so I can bring my education and my level of understanding up to a level where I think it probably should be, but I know I can never say as 100% authority that I have an assessment on the situation, because I've not been there yet to see it with my own eyes. Something I definitely plan on resolving soon. My question is from the two different ideological camps, okay, and then your perspective as an insider looking out from the situation of Africa. Controversial question. Which two of the ideals have, up until this point, served Africa better, right? And in terms of, I'll break it down to two different categories. One is awareness, right? Just going about and just creating awareness. I could definitely see just breaking the mold and just screaming from the rooftops, and we just need to do this. I imagine this camp's going to spread more awareness to kick off with. But then you then now have a responsibility as, say, a CEO of a Bitcoin company to then implement systems that are actually long-standing, that are really going to last what an outsider would assume is a very politically unstable environment, which you would think this is the right way to go ahead, right? Just crazy anarchistic ideology to say, look, like, they can't take away your stuff. Africa, you need to use Bitcoin, and you need to use, say, the BTC variant of Bitcoin for all of these reasons. But then at a much, much, much deeper level, we're like, well, we want to resolve this forever, right? So how do you go about addressing that, being in your position?
Yeah, as a company, you have two fronts, as you say. One is the side where you're trying to create a product that your customers will trust. So you have to spend a lot of time on making sure that the products you build are not only user-friendly and accessible, but of course have the safety and all that sort of thing baked into it. So that's a very important thing that we take very seriously. But then you also have to make sure that the regulatory authority looks at you as a company that's not trying to subvert people and try and lure them away from the control that they have. You have to try and show that you are doing all the necessary things that make your business comply. So we have to then think about, first of all, the security and the safety and the usability for our customers, and building a brand, and then presenting ourselves to the regulators as a company that's responsible and has ethics and integrity. So and also one of those messages that you talk about, the ideals, the whole Bitcoin crypto kind of ideal has been very much a case of being your own bank and not your keys, not your coins. But what we have found is that our customers don't want that. They want to feel that they are being looked after. But also there's other ideal that you shouldn't link your personal information. You shouldn't allow regulators to be able to track and trace you. But we have to then present data to our regulators, in terms of anti-money laundering rules and counter-terrorist financing, and also knowing your customer rules as well. So, we have a business that is trying to represent and build a new ecosystem around this new idea, this novel idea of money that's not issued by a central bank, but then trying to make sure that we follow the existing rules so that the governments don't and the rulers don't try and shut us down. And I think what we're going to be doing, and this is the path we're on, is trying to pull people away from that crypto ideology into the traditional financial services ideology, where yes, we do know your information and we do analytics on that information because we have to. The rules say that we have to comply with those obligations. So obviously. The way people have thought about this space from the crypto ideology point of view, what we're doing is completely against that. But we realize that if we want to make this an accessible technology and we want to provide value to our customers, we're going to have to give them the same kinds of benefits and assurances and features that the traditional financial services industry have been developing over years, allowing them to feel confident that their data is safe and private and that they're not going to lose their keys. That's a very important thing. That is actually where we're going to have the most impact, because they are a very small number of crypto idealists, who believe in this idea of not having your personal information tracked. But that's just a small little contingent of users. The rest are the vast majority of users who have never even touched Bitcoin, that are not going to expect to have their control of their own keys. They don't want to be their own bank. They want the same level of service that the financial services industry have given them. So this is going to be something that we are going to try and keep driving forward. And in fact, we're making a lot of headway in that regard. So we're building brand. We're trying to build consumer confidence. We're trying to appeal and to the regulators to make sure that we don't fall afoul of any of their rules. And because
how many
of
countries within Africa are you operating in? Is it just SA right now? Or?
Well, obviously we operate around the world, but the products that we have, which are retail products, so buying Bitcoin in store and connecting to bank accounts, we are tackling South Africa because that's where we are. It's a market we understand. But everything that we're doing, that would be the proof of the concept. We have the actual now real products that have been rolled out, and now we have a model that we can now take to these other countries. So we can demonstrate, that we've crossed off all the right things in terms of our regulatory responsibilities, and we now present those to the different countries. So we are very excited to move through the African continent. There are countries like Kenya and Rwanda and Uganda, and Nigeria. I mean, what we have now, in fact, is a product in Nigeria, which is the largest, the number of people on the continent, second largest economy after South Africa. We've got a cross-border solution now, so we've got 2 countries, major countries that we operate in, and we'll certainly be taking that model now to the rest of the continent. We love Africa. I really believe Bitcoin will rise in Africa. We see, right now in South Africa, if you were there, you'd see how accessible Bitcoin is, SV that is. You can go and buy your groceries and Bitcoin at the same time. We're rolling out payment systems there as well. So there we've really got, I think, from a global perspective, a great example of how Bitcoin can develop and flourish. And we think that, everyone should look at South Africa today to see how it can actually unfold. Once we feel like we've got a good grasp on the rest of the continent, we're very excited to move into the other emerging economies. That's to us is the prize, taking those economies on. But as a global company, we're quite happy to operate.
What do you think's holding Africa back, factoring other technologies that are out there that could be combined with, say, Bitcoin? From one area that I'm very interested in is employing Africans as a London business. So I'm a UK business. I want to employ people in Africa, right? So they'll be earning directly in SV. What are the hurdles to that? How would the government feel about that? How would that individual feel about that? How does that person declare earnings? How does that person, if that person doesn't have, say, maybe the necessary prerequisites that we would deem to be acceptable for AML KYC, just due to the fact that birth advantage or birth disadvantage in this case, just don't have access to that information? How do we then look at, say, creating digital alternatives so someone could start building a history, building a bio, a profile that then gives me as an employer an account that says, okay, this is why this person is within my employment. Fine, 5 years ago, couldn't have employed this individual, but due to new technologies, this is everything I know about this person. So what does that look like? Are there any conversation happening around that? What are the next things that we need to do as a collective to start really unlocking that talent?
Yeah, well, Africans are very used to mobile money. So, getting them into something like Bitcoin is very easy, actually. If you said, look, here's a wallet and you can receive money from overseas at very low cost, that's something that is really appealing to Africans, especially because a lot of them live outside of their countries and send money back home. So, the whole idea of cross-border remittance, I know that was a cliche with Bitcoin, but it's a very real fact that's happening on the ground. But what is holding that back is the lack of, at this stage, of exchanges. I think the technical capability, we don't have any off-the-shelf sort of exchange products that are accessible to a lot of countries that could easily do this. I think there's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to start thinking about building these exchanges in a box, and then allowing people to operate them in those different countries. That is really the one thing that if we could get these liquid exchanges into these different countries, then that would really open up a lot of opportunity. Because right now it's very easy to receive Bitcoin SV, but very difficult to cash out or to spend it. The cross-border remittance products that we have, what we do is we deposit, we remit with Bitcoin, but then we deposit directly into bank accounts or into mobile money. So you need the exchange ability to be able to do that. So that is certainly the one thing, but obviously the education and education from at high level, going in there with a message of this is not an anonymous thing. This is something that you can have all the KYC you need. We can do all the AML. It's traceable. That kind of education is still lacking. I think the dominant sort of crypto narrative right now is that it's this dark web technology.
Yeah.
So it would be great to have people who understood these concepts, and really went on a mission, to go to these countries and try and speak to as many people, get involved at the Bitcoin meetups, try and put that message in front of people, not the message of crypto anarchy. That is missing. And it's unfortunate because, all the prominent people on YouTube and Twitter, that's not their message, and we have to get people who are well-spoken and understand these things to...
We've got John McAfee, what are you on about?
Yes, that's the problem, you see. It's precisely guys like John McAfee, but also, everybody else they're publishing books, guys like Andreas Antonopoulos,
Oh, dude, man. Fall from grace.
Yes, they are respected and authority, like they'll be invited into meetings and asked for their opinion, and they'll give them everybody the wrong message. So, it's almost like we need to start training up ambassadors, and I guess that's what Bitcoin Ambassador Program is doing, to try and go into these countries and spread the true vision of Satoshi Nakamoto, which is this technology that, is not...
Switches the lights on.
Switches the lights on. And once we get that message out there, then businesses will be more inclined to look into it, because right now, obviously, they won't touch it. Banks, want to de-risk. They don't want to have companies that are involved in crypto. And then, of course, the tax authorities and the regulators, the reserve banks, the central banks. They must stop hearing this message of decentralized finance.
One, it's just not true. Yes. Anyway, right? The way that this community has depicted decentralization, they have it horrifically misunderstood. Horrifically distributed, fine. Decentralized, horrifically misunderstood. So there is just so much spells within the spelling. That really is just portraying the complete, utter wrong image. I couldn't agree with you more. And a lot of it is actually done without people knowing, which becomes even more dangerous when you're not even aware of the impact of the words it is that you're saying and the reality is in which it's creating. But on the positive note, I've just seen through my own interactions and what it is that we're doing here and the kind of conversations that we're having with other institutions and other organizations and individuals, that there definitely is now a sense of an awakening happening, right? Where people who have sat patiently on the sidelines and even dabbled in interacting and engaged, and some of these people in a very, very aggressive way as well, with how the industry has been run really up until this point. And I've been someone who's just been speaking the same message for about 3 years now as to where it is that we need to be going. But I'll say over the last 2 years-ish, that message has been received with some pushback, right? I'm talking about like private conversations and have a conversation like amongst friends or acquaintances or people that they introduce me to who clearly come to the table with their own strong views on being a crypto expert, right? I'm Mr. Ethereum or I'm Mr. EOS, I'm Mr. this or Holochain or whatever it is that they want to speak on. And I'm always respectful, just place my views forward. And I have no interest in arguing. Like I can pretty confidently say, I don't think I've actually gone at anybody online, really. Because from my standpoint, what am I arguing with you guys about? There's nothing to argue about. If this is your beliefs, then great, bro. And if you believe what it is that you're speaking, right, that you want this utopian world and you want this amazing, beautiful world, do you know what? If you achieve it, then we both win, right? So I'm not arguing. I have no interest in arguing. But one thing that I find really, really interesting now with where this space is going, the attention now isn't one of mocking, laughter, and skepticism. Ears are now really genuinely starting to prick up. And it's not just price action. It's the fact that all the deliverables on the pledges and the promises that have been made to get to where we are now, which is returning back to Genesis, and now the subsequent things that are going to happen as a result of that, it shows business continuity, it shows business acumen, and it shows a well-oiled machine that is the whole ecosystem that is bound around SV, that we're actually just getting things done. If you look at and you evaluate the Bitcoin blockchain from the standpoints that really matter, transactions per second and block sizes, there's no argument. There really is no argument. So all of this other kind of loosely supported ideological reasons as to why someone is or isn't involved. What I hope is that if they really listen to their own message, saying that they genuinely want a better world, right, then by very simple reflection, they should drop the ego that came along with everything it is that they were saying by supporting a wrong project. Keep hold of the vision it is that you want for humanity. You just need to drop it into this camp and then contribute and just carry on moving forward. And I really hope that this event that we're both going to be speaking about this week, CoinGeek London, that effect is felt, because it's definitely happening. And this is why I really wanted to touch base with certain speakers who are going to be speaking at CoinGeek London, because we don't get that much admiration and support, right? It's very much the opposite. Everyone's always willing to have the machine gun waiting for us, right? I definitely feel like we definitely need to just speak life into each other and support each other, because like I said to you, Lorien, in the earlier stages here at Bitstocks, you were a name that propped up by doing some really inspiring things in Africa, all right? And you stayed on that thread. And God knows how difficult it is to hold on to the thread in this space, especially when it is being so closely tied to the original, ironically, vision of the founder who birthed the freaking space, all right? Which gives me, and hopefully you and everyone else, a lot more confidence that we're in the right place, right? We're being attacked for a reason. So just on the subject of CoinGeek, is there anything that you want to loosely touch on as to what you'll be speaking of? Or
yes, I think that this time I'm going to be just talking about what it takes to build a business on Bitcoin that can be sustainable and can do all the right things so that your local regulators are quite happy for you to exist. That's what I'll mostly be focusing on. Although awesome. I do want to drop at the end something cool that Centbee has done now. Because I like to, just talk about our vision and where we are. But there's actually a feature right now in Centbee that's unique that no other wallets are doing yet. And I think that a lot of people...
I definitely tell you're excited about it. You're holding it in right. You're like, I want to say it, but I can't say
it. Well, look, it's not extremely groundbreaking, but it's taking something that BSV has really started on, and it'll be expanding on that.
Awesome.
But I think the important thing is, we can't be building businesses. We can't have that hacker mentality that we're building a Bitcoin business and we're just a bunch of hooded hackers whacking out software. We have to be grown-ups. We have to look at the financial services industry, the way it has been developed over the last, hundreds of years. And we have to take the best elements of those businesses and try and think of ourselves as a grown-up, responsible business with obligations to our customers, obligations to our regulators, and what that looks like. So that's mostly what I'll be focusing on, giving maybe tips and suggestions to other potential Bitcoin businesses so that they can, not make the mistakes that I think a lot of businesses are doing and create something that's sustainable.
Awesome. Well, brother, I know we both got a tight schedule. I know you definitely got a tight schedule, something you need to attend to after this. Genuinely, thank you so much for coming down, sharing your message, what you guys are doing over at Centbee. Again, like I said, Africa is a really, really, really close to my heart with what I want to do. And I'm not going to speak on anything in relation to that at this event at CoinGeek, but definitely things later on down the line, just laying out our intent more so around education. And how perfect example is Lagos, right? Nigeria. It's one of the greatest computer science universities in the world, right? So these are the attributes and things that as a business with a global view on the cusp of the most insane technological innovations, available to humanity right now, Bitcoin only being one of them. I just find the subject of Africa a really interesting and beautiful one, where very, very drastic changes are going to start happening, like really, really soon. And I know it's not just my intent, it's the intent of many of those over here at Bitstocks, and the ones who are already bounding around us and supporting us. They understand that Africa has a role to play. So it was a great pleasure to have you here to have the conversation. And I have no doubt that our paths are going to be aligned moving forward as well on the subject of Africa. So any last words that you want to say before we round up?
Thank you very much for having me. It was great to chat to you again. And absolutely, look at Africa. It's an exciting place, but keep spreading the message of Satoshi's vision. It's the only message that will prevail. And keep fighting the good fight. Obviously, I think that it's very famous for things have been said about if no one thinks you're crazy, then you're not on the right path. So we certainly are looking crazy, but I believe we're on the right path, and it'll all turn out great for us.
100%. So with that being said, in true fashion as always, guys, if you like this conversation, please like, comment, subscribe, and until the next time, peace, love, and light. All the best. Thank you.